Hello and welcome back to the Right Hand Podcast and another installment of our special series, Building Without a Blueprint. This series here is dedicated to the firm owners who are building something extraordinary without having been given a roadmap. This is, attorneys who may be first in their family to own a business, first to become a lawyer, first to build a law firm, first to, navigate things such as like leadership, hiring, growth and all the challenges that come with entrepreneurship. Many firm owners have had to figure things out as they go along, and that's not because they wanted to. It's because they didn't always have access to the same networks or mentorships, resources, or examples that others may have had. So building without a blueprint is about those journeys. It's about the challenges, the lessons, successes, realities of building a law firm when there isn't a clear path to follow. So, whether you're a minority owned law firm, a woman owned law firm, first generation professional, or just simply someone building a business without a playbook, this series is for you. Because asking questions is not weakness, seeking guidance is not failure. And building a great firm doesn't mean you have to build it alone. So now let's just jump into today's episode. And nobody taught us this part, you know. This is the business side of building a law firm. And so I just wanted to open today's episode with a simple question. And that is, how much of law school prepared you to run a business? And I've said this before, law school prepares us to practice law partially, but not really to run a law firm. You may learn business law in law school, but not the business of law. And I'm asking, how much did your law school prepare you to run a business? And it's just not to practice, not to draft documents, not to analyze cases, not to argue motions, but to actually run a business. For most attorneys, the answer is probably very little. And yet, every year, thousands of lawyers leave firms, open practices, and suddenly become business owners. So for overnight, they go from attorney to CEO, from practitioner to entrepreneur, from legal advisor to organizational leader, and and in that, many discover something surprising, that the practice of law and the business of law are two very different things. So that's why we're calling today's episode Nobody Taught Us This Part. Because for many law firm owners, the challenge isn't legal expertise. The real challenge is everything else that comes with running a law firm. And so um, there's a great disconnect, I like to say. So, like most attorneys spend years learning how to become lawyers, but very few spend time learning how to build actual organizations. So just think about, take a second, think about all the responsibilities that come with law firm ownership. And it's, you know, hiring, compensation, marketing, cash flow, technology, leadership, operations, strategic planning, team development. Uh, you know, so most lawyers receive very little training, formal training in any of these. So, you know, still these responsibilities, ultimately determine whether a firm thrives or struggles. And this matters a lot for first generation firm owners because there are additional challenges that come from that. If you like, so if you come from a family of business owners, you probably absorb lessons without even realizing. Just like someone whose family, a professional athlete whose parents were professional athletes, they soak it in the business of being a professional athlete, or an entertainer, an actor, things like that. Someone who watched their father run or mother run the farm. But because you see things like budgeting, hiring, planning, leadership. You may have watched someone navigate those challenges, even from soaked it in even from a young age. But for many law firm owners, they never had that exposure. So a lot of these are first entrepreneur in the family, maybe the first professional in the family, the first person to build something of this scale, which means that they're learning two things simultaneously. So they're learning how to practice law, and they're also learning how to run a business, and that's a tremendous, tremendous responsibility. And there's always a myth involved in everything. And one thing I've observed over the years is that many law firm owners believe in this myth that everyone else knows more. They just assume that everyone else around them has it figured out. They see successful law firms or successful attorneys and think, you know, they must know something I don't. Maybe they received better training, went to a better school. They must have some secret. But in reality, it's usually much different. Most successful law firm owners, they've learned through experience. They've learned through making mistakes, through mentorship, through trial and error. And the difference is, it isn't that they knew everything right away. The difference is that they kept learning. They made a conscious effort to keep learning. And so you have to learn the business side of it all because there's a hidden cost to not learning that. So when you avoid the business side of the firm, several things tend to happen. Growth becomes inconsistent. Financial surprises pop up. Hiring becomes reactive instead of intentional, and your systems, they remain underdeveloped. And then you have leadership challenges that emerge, and often this leads to the owner of the law firm, the founder, becoming overwhelmed. And it's not because they're incapable, but it's because they're trying to lead a business without the tools that they were never taught. And so, if I were to tell you, if I were advising, there's some matters, some areas that matter most in running and building a law firm. And if I were advising a growing law firm owner on where to focus, I would suggest on these five areas. Number one is financial literacy. Um, and you don't need to become an accountant, but you do need to understand things such as revenue, profit, cash flow, utilization, um, key performance indicators, things like that, because you need to be able to look at the numbers and analyze them because the numbers tell a story. And to lead a law firm, you need to understand that story. Number two, leadership. So leadership is not just a title; it's actually a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed. You've heard that leaders are not born; they're made. You have to learn how to communicate, um, accountability in the law firm. You have to learn about decision making, conflict resolution, and these are leadership capabilities that directly impact the firm performance. Number three, operations. And operations is just simply how the work gets done. So strong firms don't rely on memory. They rely on systems. They rely on processes, workflow, structure. And this what this does is creates consistency and scalability. Um, and so they develop process systems and workflows where the firm works with one attorney and it works as efficiently with 10 attorneys. Number four in that is hiring. And too many firms treat hiring as an event. And just that I have more cases. I need another attorney, or I'm getting more intake calls. I need to add an admin. But it has to be more than just that. Um, it successful firms treat hiring as a strategy. They map it out. Why am I hiring? When I hire, what is this person's job going to be? What are their duties going to be? Because every hire that you do, it changes the organization. Every hire influences your firm culture, and every hire affects future growth. So you have to be more intentional about that, and more strategic. Number five, I would say, is strategic planning And one of the biggest differences between struggling firms and thriving firms is thriving firms move intentionally. Um, where are we going? What are we building? What needs to happen next? They're often asking the questions. Um, and without strategic planning, the growth it feels random. Uh, you have to, as a firm owner, have the courage to ask questions. And one of the reasons I wanted to create this series is that too many law firm owners believe they should already know these things. They feel embarrassed to ask questions, maybe embarrassed to seek help, embarrassed to admit that they don't understand something. I mean, we went through law school. We're supposed to know everything, you know. But the truth is that nobody starts knowing how to build a law firm. No, nobody. Um, the willingness to ask questions is not a weakness. It's often, to me, it's one of the strongest indicators of future success, because you're willing to learn. Uh, you have to build your business education as a law firm, and this is one of the best investments that you can make. Investing in your own business education. Read books, attend workshops, join peer groups. You can work with advisors. Listen to podcasts, study leaderships, study operations, study growth. The firms that consistently um, you know, need to keep learning or tend to have leaders that keep learning are the ones who never, they keep growing, and you know, you grow through learning, never stop. So if there's one thing I hope the listeners take away from today's episode is this: it's you're not behind, you're not unqualified, you're not the only one trying to figure this out as you go. Most successful law firms, um, they learn the business side of the law after they started their law firms and not before. The key is that they were intentional about their learning process. Um, just to wrap it up, kind of. So building a law firm requires more than just legal expertise. It requires leadership, strategy, operations, financial understanding, and I would say probably the most importantly, the willingness to learn skills that nobody taught you. Because building a firm without a blueprint doesn't mean that you're destined to struggle. Um, what it means is that you simply must be intentional about creating your own roadmap. So thank you for joining me for another episode of Building Without a Blueprint. In our next episode, what we'll do is we'll tackle a topic that it resonates, I'm sure, with many law firm founders, and that's the hidden cost of being first. So until next time, just keep building intentionally. And remember, great firms aren't built by accident. They're built through leadership, through structure, through continuous learning. Um, and, you know, thanks again for listening to the Right Hand Podcast. If you're a law firm owner looking to build a stronger, more organized, and more profitable law firm, please visit Reuben-Allen.com and learn how we can help firms grow. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow. And hey, feel free to share it with another law firm leader, another law firm owner. Until next time, keep building the firm you set out to create. Thank you.